Welcome to the Bowel Chronicles, where we dive deep into the world of bowel health. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and on this podcast we have raw and candid conversations with individuals facing various bowel conditions and illnesses. Through personal stories and shared experiences, we illuminate resilience and courage in the face of adversity. Be reminded that each story is personal and unique. These conversations are not to be taken as medical advice or to replace guidance from a doctor or healthcare provider. Our aim is to inspire and empower through these amazing stories, amplifying voices often unheard. So join us as we embark on this journey together. Sit back, listen, and be inspired. Enjoy the episode. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Bowel Chronicles. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and today I am joined by Ben, or some of you might know him on social media as Stoma Diaries. Ben, it is great to have you here with us today, sharing some of your story. You're very, very welcome.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
It's great. So Ben, your journey has been one of Crohn's disease, one of inflammatory bowel disease, and you have had a few surgeries. So if we could just kind of kick off by going back and you tell us a little bit about how did you come to terms with Crohn's disease? How did you find out you had it? What were some of your symptoms and where did your kind of journey begin?
So I was officially diagnosed in 2009, so quite a while ago now. It was on the back of, it's so long I can't exactly remember, but I reckon probably for 3, 4, 5 months worth of being pretty unwell. My dad has got IBS, so initially they just thought it was IBS. It was interesting, actually. I had a conversation with my dad not long ago, and a memory that I had actually might have been years before I actually even started to really start to get quite bad. I think I might have had quite a bad episode where I was getting all these kind of stomach pains. Because I remember I was at home and I was my dad came in because he was worried where I'd been. I was just lying on the floor, like curled up in fetal position. I was just in agony. But then when we thought about the timeline. Actually, if I was back home, that must have been before I went to university. So that must have been when I was back in sixth form. So actually, that was a long time ago. That was kind of back sort of probably 2003 or something. So I almost wonder whether I had like a bit of an episode that they kind of treated as IBS because my dad had it and they just assumed it was that. Did enough to kind of mask it. Got me through university. I was then absolutely fine. And then it was then after when I was working and I was still just getting worse and fatigue, well, tiredness, not really fatigue, but tiredness. And then my main symptoms were diarrhea and urgency, and started getting blood, and I lost a lot of weight. I mean, I was quite overweight before I was diagnosed, but I went from about 16 stone 7 and dropped down to like 11 and a half stone in probably about 4 months or so. And I'm quite a big guy, and like you could see like my ribs through my back. And I remember going home and trying to explain to my mum, and I was just grey. I looked really grey, and my mum was like almost in tears when she could like see my ribs from behind. And so I never really kind of imagined I saw myself as being that ill. Fortunately, I reacted quite well to the drugs that they put me on, so obviously went through the normal route. Again, actually, they tried to sort of palm me off for quite a long time at the GPs because they weren't really that interested. I was really fortunate that I had private healthcare through my employment at the time, and so I took that up, and they were really effective and efficient. Gave me the colonoscopy, and sort of diagnosed me. And I remember the doctor coming back in afterwards and was like, "I've got some news to tell you. I'm afraid you've got Crohn's disease." And I was like, "Oh, I've got a disease!" And I was almost like elated and actually really strangely happy because all of a sudden, at least it had some sense and it had a name, and I could kind of make sense of why I actually had been so ill. And I'm telling my parents, and they were just like, "Oh my god," they were so like distraught, really. And obviously, from their point of view, it was kind of like I think they just assumed it was their fault, and like they'd given me bad genes and stuff. And so it's not necessarily anything you've done; it's just unfortunate, and then it's unfortunate that it's just kind of kicked off. So yeah, I went through all of that, and actually, as I said, I was quite kind of pleased to be diagnosed. I didn't really know anything about it at the time. I don't think I'd ever really heard of it. Because back in kind of 2009, social media wasn't really a thing. There wasn't really much around. Obviously, there was Facebook, but so I learned a bit. I think I didn't connect initially because, again, back then it seemed to be the only things we reported were like really really people with really bad cases who are like seriously ill, and so well that's not me. I'm unwell, but I'm not. I can still kind of function. So I found it how hard to kind of find a place in that community, and so I just kind of ignored it and got on with my life. So the drugs were working. I just had the normal sort of prednisolone and things initially. Then I went on to Pentasa, and that kept me going for quite a long time. Eventually onto azathioprine, and then I'd be sort of long-term azathioprine and Pentasa. Then I managed to come off both of those, and I had about a year and a half where I was in like total remission, which was great. And kind of even almost forgot that I got it really. And then it crept back, and I ended up having to sort of rely on more doses of steroids eventually. And then I think it was probably around lockdown. It gradually just got quite bad by that point. And again, for me, the urgency, the bleeding, incontinence had started as well. I just wasn't making it to the toilet. And I was just, I can't deal with this anymore. I got to the point where I was having to wear adult nappies to go to work. And as a teacher, it was mortifying, to be honest. Like it was, and when it got to the point where I was having accidents and I wasn't even upset about it anymore, I was like, oh, this is daft. This is not right. Like I need to get some help. And then the IBD team were great, and they're like, oh, I think we need to get you to speak to a surgeon now. And because I tried 2 biologics by this point, and neither of those worked. They just didn't do anything. I just didn't improve at all. So yeah, went into surgery as a mild to moderate case of the disease, but by the time I got there, it was extensive all the way through my large intestine, and I got narrowing at the end of my small intestine as well. So it was surgery changed, and ended up going from an initial loop ileostomy to then an end ileostomy and a subtotal colectomy. So they took all my colon. And initially we left the rectum and anus in, and then later on I had to have that removed as well, which I'll probably delve into in a bit.
So let's just take a wee moment here to let's a lot, from you were kind of late teens right through going through university, a young man starting to work in a new profession. You manage it for a while on different forms of medication, and then it flares up again. You're hit with biologics, they don't work for you, and then you're faced with we need to have a discussion with the surgeon because if it got so advanced, it was the whole way through your large intestine and then into your small intestine. How like going to work with wearing an incontinence nappy, things like that. I'm flabbergasted that you were even able to be in work. A lot of people can't, and you probably pushed yourself to still be present and have kind of normal life. How did you cope? How did you deal with that? A young man, and probably, I don't know, was there relationships in happening in your life or anything like that when all of this is kind of flaring up and you're coming to terms with this?
Yeah, so relationship wise, I've been with my wife now pretty much all the way through the journey, to be honest. Since 2005 we've been together, so she's been with me all the way through pre diagnosis to all the treatments and surgery and everything. We had already had both of my children by the time it came to having surgery as well, so all of those kind of things I'd kind of managed. And I had all of that on top of everything else with a really busy workload as well. I work at an independent school, and the hours are very, very long. I was doing a management role as well at the time. So it was a lot. In terms of how I coped, to be honest, I don't really know now. I look back and I don't, other than like you say, you just push yourself through, and you kind of do it because you have to do it, and you kind of can do it. Again, one thing I've kind of really learned through certainly my social media presence is just how unique everyone's stories is leading up to any kind of ostomy, but even within the IBD community, how unique everybody's journey is. So I kind of went into the surgery thinking like, why do I need this? Like I've not been in hospital numerous times. I think I probably had 1, maybe 2 hospital admissions before the surgeries for like infections and stuff like that. So it was hard to take going in, but as I say, I kind of mentally was pretty beat down. And I think that in itself kind of got me through and allowed me to keep going, because I can function, I can get on and do these things. I can still be a dad, I can still be a husband, and I can still go to work and get stuff done. But I was so run down by the end. I was tired. I was so tired. I'd just get back from work, and the amount of times I'd just be sitting on the sofa and I'd start falling asleep. Couldn't pick my kids up anymore, and my youngest was only 4 at the time, and I could barely pick him up. So I was so weak. So I think, yeah, I don't know really how I got through, other than just, I think, as
Well,
a
probably your kids and your wife and your job. You have we kind of take it on as this is our new normal and this is how life is. And some people might say this is the hand of cards we've been dealt with, but you navigate through it, and before you can think of, you've been through a long period of time on this journey. But then it comes to that kind of pivotal point where it's like my quality of life matters, and a stoma won't end. It will give me a quality of life. So your surgery then was chatted through, and your surgery was elective surgery, whereas some people are in an emergency, some people's bowel might perforate and they don't know they're having a stoma. So how long did you have, what period of time did you have to kind of get your head around surgery happening?
I reckon I probably had 5 months maybe from the point of it being like, actually, yeah, we need to speak to the surgeon, and having that initial conversation. I can't remember now. I think I might have had a couple of conversations before it was all kind of like formally booked in, and even then there was the option, if you, it's your choice. This is elective, as you said. And, if you don't want to go for it, go ahead. You can pull out. So I think I had a couple of chats, certainly with like the IBD team and stoma nurses, as well as the surgeon. Yeah, it's probably about 5 months kind of lead in. At the time, I wasn't on social media, so I didn't really have a massive amount to go on in terms of information and realistic information for someone of my age as to what it was going to be like. So I turned to YouTube, and I found videos from a couple of people on there that were really useful. I think, as most people do, Mr. Colitis Crohn's videos popped up pretty quickly as soon as you start searching for this stuff. And his videos just gave me the reality of what a stoma looked like, kind of how you would care for it, what the bags are, how you apply the bags, and it gave me the functional information that I needed. And then I found a series of videos from my now good friend Moeed Majid, who he'd just really raw documented his time built prior to surgery, during the process, and after. And it was really a kind of like, so really raw, really light and dark, and it was just his kind of personal monologue, really. But that's what I needed. I needed that because, I say, I hadn't got access to anything. All I then got was all these pamphlets of pictures of like 70-year-old people having stomas. I was like, well, that's, I'm like half that age. That's not me. Like, I needed something more like myself. And it was through that's where I kind of had the ambition to then start my account, so I could then try and give back, really, and help others in the way that I'd found those videos there be helpful to me.
I think it's pretty cool, because that too was kind of my journey. I had 6 days notice that I was going to have my stoma surgery, which for me was great. It was to be 3 weeks, and it was cut down to 6 days. However, I hadn't really realised that in the last year leading up to that, I had been watching other people's social media accounts. I'd been learning what a stoma looked like, how to do a bag change, and it was just people showing simplified steps of this is how quick, this is how easy it is to manage a stoma, and then showing their life, showcasing their life. And I thought, oh my goodness, they're having like an amazing quality of life in comparison to me being stuck at home, can't leave the house because of a bowel regime or whatever. So I knew whenever I was on my journey, I was already sharing my business and stuff online. I was sharing my journey already of kind of the raw, real, authentic side of me in pain, in agony, because I thought at the time I felt like the only person out there, that I knew there would be one other person out there. And if I could reach that one other person, then I would be giving back into the community and benefiting from those on social media. It's just like, okay, this is the way forward, because how do we move away from that stigma of life is over once you have a stoma? We must, in today's society, we have to move forward with this. My mindset was, I watched the demise of my grandmother who'd been through bowel surgery, who'd had a stoma, couldn't leave her bed, couldn't change her own stoma. And it was either I take on this outlook in life of my life is over, or I have to swap up this mindset, and having access to so many people online sharing a positive journey. Now, it's not all rosy, but what they were sharing definitely helped me flip the mindset over to this is going to help me. I can have a better quality of life. So, you've been doing social media now for quite a few years. Your account's flying. I'm not going to say, but you are an ambassador for one of our ostomy supply companies. You do amazing work. You share everything on your social media. How does that make you feel as a young man? I think it's amazing because not too many young men put that kind of raw, real stuff out on social media. You know, the male persona is like we're macho. We don't share those intimate things, which is wrong because there are so many males out there who are maybe hiding the fact that they're bleeding when they go to the toilet. And what happens is the disease gets so advanced that emergency surgery is needed, or it can eventually become cancerous and things change in the body. And so to prevent that, it is amazing to see young males kind of step out of their comfort zone and just air it all on social media. How do you feel?
Um, it, it means so much to me. Like, well, actually, one of my biggest fears is someone hacks my account and I like lose my account. It's as the name says, it's my diaries as well. Like, it's something that I want to be able to look back in years to come and remember. My memory is pretty awful, and I'll forget half of the stuff. I'll forget the experiences. I'll forget what I've looked like. And sometimes I even do like little posts where I look back at what I looked like almost immediately prior to surgery and what I look like now. I've been I found the gym since, and even small things like that. Actually, seeing how my body has changed over time is so yeah, it's massive. I met yesterday with somebody that I've met off Instagram community who lives in my town. He's just had his surgery, and I just went to go and see him in the hospital last night, and that was really nice. That things like that are really special because you know that you've been able to make a difference to somebody else's life, and they make a difference to yours too. Like they enrich yours, and the community is like everything to me. It means so much. I don't think people on the outside can fully appreciate it and what it means. I don't think they can get it, but it's like you found your people, you found your tribe. And in terms of having like a male voice, I'm glad you said that because I feel like that. I feel like there's not many other sort of young guys out there doing kind of stuff that I do. Because I think you're right. There's this kind of like male bravado. There's a real big hidden sort of male body image issue as well. I think a lot of guys are not prepared to kind of talk about body issues and image problems that they've got, but I think guys do. There's no difference to women. We worry about what we look like. We worry about what other guys think we look like, what women think we look like. Mm-hmm. And when you've got something different like a stoma bag on top of that anyway, like it just adds another layer. It's for me, it's not my bag itself actually isn't something that I've got any real kind of image hang-ups on. The way that my stoma causes a bulge on my tummy, that causes a bit, but actually it's more of the fact that I'm just carrying some extra weight on my tummy, and that's the bit that I kind of like get a bit anxious about. But I'll post about that as well because actually I want people to know that yeah, it's normal to have body image, and actually you don't have to go into this process if you're going to have surgery thinking that all your image worries are going to be on your stoma. They're not. They're going to be on all sorts of things that you've already had body image hang-ups, and it's I hope that I'm able to get across like a positive but realistic impression. I've been very fortunate so far, and I haven't hit any real kind of major complications. I had a few issues after surgeries, particularly with the proctectomy surgery that I had, the second surgery. But so most of the time it is positive because that's been my experience so far. But I do, like you, fully intend that, you know, when I hit the dark times, I hit the hard times, I'm going to talk about that because the only way that you can really help people and connect with people is by being your honest, true self. So it'll be, when it comes, it'll
let's just, because you touched on the word proctectomy again, I kind of just want to put it out there for our audience and our listeners and viewers. You know, this language they may not fully understand. So you have had an end ileostomy done. At first you had a subtotal colectomy done, which was part removal of the bowel. with your end ileostomy. So that's a little part of the small bowel brought out through an opening on the skin, and that's called the stoma. And then a bag is attached onto that, hence the word stoma bag. After that, they had left your rectum and things in place. And then since that, your initial surgery, they then went in and removed your rectum, and they basically stitch you up because that no longer is needed. And you might have heard the term for our audience, a Barbie butt or a Ken butt. That is a perfect bum where it's all stitched up and it's all good, and it really doesn't have any major impact on you. So on the other side of having those surgeries, Ben, how has life been from a Crohn's point of view? You've had removal of everything. How, like, are you still impacted by anything? What is life like for you?
So the reason I then had the Barbie bum, the proctectomy, whatever we want to call it, was because my rectum was always actually where my Crohn's was worse. But I think they didn't want to take everything all in one go. They didn't really think I was kind of healthy enough to do that. And wanted to give me the option of a reversal as well, rather than go straight into a fully permanent stoma. Um, and whilst I had the rectum still in, I was still getting, because you for those that don't know, you still end up passing a mucus. Your rectum has a mucus lining, and it still produces that even if there's no waste going through. The rectum doesn't know that it's not connected anymore, so it still makes that. And so I was having issues with that where it was producing too much, and I was then getting bleeding, and I was getting urgency and incontinence with that. So mentally, I kind of was just like, I've gone through all this on incontinence. I don't want to be going back to having to wear nappies again. I've now got this bag to deal with as well. I don't want to be there. And of course, like you mentioned earlier, when you've got active IBD, there's an increased risk of cancer. And I don't know everything about it, but from what I understand, with when you've not got stool passing through the rectum anymore, it changes the way that the bacteria work in the lining of the rectum, and so it makes it much harder for them to use the markers that they normally would do to diagnose cancer. So you can have a higher risk not only of getting cancer, but undetectable rectal cancer. And knowing how active it was, and the suppositories and the enemas and things weren't really working, it's like, well, I don't want to keep living like this. And I don't want to run the risk of getting rectal cancer, especially if it's going to be hard to diagnose. And actually, I'm fine with my stoma as it is. I personally didn't see the point of having a reversal and going back to kind of having diarrhea again, but kind of controlled diarrhea 7-8 times a day. It didn't appeal. So I just decided, actually, I'm gonna have this removed. Let's get rid of that as well and make it permanent. And I think, again, actually for me, that was a turning point in my mentality, because knowing that was it, it's then helped me come to terms with, this is it. This is my life now. There is no going back. I don't have any other decisions to make at the moment unless my disease comes back in the small or the stomach or something. This is my normal, and I've just got to get on with it. So that kind of helps.
I wonder if we can, and tell me no here if you don't want to talk about this, but how did your wife deal with your surgery? What was that like for her? Because obviously a relationship is very intimate. This is a change to your body. You also then have recovery post surgery, and you have two small children. And even how did your kids react to it? What is life like for them? How do they understand this? Let's, if we can, and like I've said, do tell me no if you don't want to talk about it.
I think I dip into it a little bit. I think I probably didn't help matters. I think I put up walls, and in my head, if not physically, in my head, I put up walls, and I put up misconceptions that I had myself of how things were, misread things that happened, and built things up in my head significantly. I think that the typical male part of not talking came in, and I internalized a lot of stuff. When actually she's been fine, she's been great, she's just been accepting. She knew right from the beginning that I needed it. I had to have it. Ultimately, before, she was having to do everything at the weekends. Like, I could functionally be at home, I could still kind of help with cooking and trying to sort of keep the house tidy, but I couldn't really do much with the kids. I couldn't go out for days out. It got to the normal that even the kids were expecting, oh, dad's going to be at home, and grandma and granddad are going to be coming with us. And so it was affecting other people in the family as well, because they were having to be sort of brought in to help my wife kind of still give the kids a normal life. So I guess from that perspective, like, actually it was fine. We just got on with stuff. The kids we were very open with as much as you can. They were young. So my youngest was 4 at the time, and my oldest would have been 6.5 when I actually had the surgery. So the older one was old enough to know what was going on and kind of understand. The younger one, I don't think really did back then. But I sat down and I talked to them about it. They know everything, they see everything. I mean, just this morning I was changing my stoma bag, and they both wandered in, and there they are brushing their teeth whilst I'm changing my stoma bag. They don't care. They just see it as normal now. Occasionally, my youngest will be like, "Oh, Daddy, does your stoma, does it hurt?" No, it doesn't hurt. It's got no feelings. You can't feel anything. It's fine, and that's it. Yeah, and I think it's just enabled us to get on. I see my stoma as an enabler. It's not a disabler. It's not a disarmer. It enables me to go and live life. I think for me, the interesting part comes on whether I view it as a disability or not, because it doesn't. It enables me, but at the same time, I don't have a fully functioning body. I have got organs missing, and from that point of view, I have a disability now. But equally, when I had Crohn's before, that was a disability. I couldn't function normally then. So it's been an interesting journey from that point in terms of that mindset. But yeah, overall, I definitely see it as an enabler, and I think my family do as well. They're happy with the fact that I can just get on and we can live a normal life.
Okay. And things like work, how it was work for you, going through surgery? Did you have a long period of time off work? Were work understanding of the situation? And how has that been post-surgery?
So yeah, it's good. Obviously, it's challenging being a teacher. It's not easy to just sort of leave classes that are relying on you and become dependent upon you. I was fortunate in the timing of my surgery. I had it about a week or two before the end of the school year. So actually, I recovered over the summer holiday, which from a work point of view was good because it then meant I wasn't missing a huge chunk of time and wasn't impacting on their education. And it gave me that rest period to recover. As I say, I was in a management position at the time. Stress has always been my biggest trigger. It's not really been what I eat. I think in reality, it's stress has been the thing that sets me off. So when I returned, I felt great. I'd recovered really well after my stoma surgery, and it was in about 3-4 weeks of being back. That's when I started to get the flare up again in the rectum, so it was still there. And it was at that point that was hard. That was mentally quite challenging to take. But again, I was just really open with them. That's the only way I can see it working. I mean, I'm fortunate that I'm a biology teacher, so it's very normal for me to talk about all of this stuff. I talk to my pupils about it as every single second I possibly can do if it's related to anything that we're learning about. I'm sure they're fed up with me talking about my bowels or my stoma bag. But I think for them it makes it real, and it means that they're going to grow up knowing about this stuff and seeing it as a normal thing as well. And that then enabled me to have the courage and the confidence just to talk to all my peers and my staff members and line managers and stuff. And so it made it a lot easier. So they've been really good. I say I've been fortunate because I haven't really had complications. I've not yet, touch wood, had a prolapse or a hernia or anything like that. Obviously, if something like that comes up, that will make things hard again and it will change things. But for the time being, it's been great. I felt at times I've sort of had to ask for adjustments rather than them come to me and kind of ask what was required. But then when I have asked, they've been brilliant and they've been really effective and efficient at sorting things out. So as you can probably see, I'm wearing a polo shirt, and that is normally we'd wear suit and tie. So you've got a shirt tucked in, but I was just finding that so restrictive on my bag because then obviously as a guy, this is the other thing I think is quite hard for guys is that for women, you can kind of wear like loose fitting clothing, dresses that kind of like hide it all. For us, where the stoma bag sits, it kind of cuts right in the middle of where your belt line is. So you either have the option of kind of tucking it all in, but then you're restricting bag volume and increasing the risk of leaks. And it just is, for me, it's uncomfortable. Or I tend to have my bag outside of my trousers and then wear a wrap over the top of that.
Yeah.
But obviously, I couldn't do that with a shirt tucked in. And so I was like, can I adjust my uniform? Can I do something different? And this is what they agreed on. And so actually now it means I do that. So I'm comfortable. And it's been received really well. I've never had any problems from anyone about that. And no one's ever said anything. They've done stuff, modifications to the toilets and stuff for me to make them a bit more stoma accessible when I've asked for them. So I think the message to anyone is just, if you need something, just ask. And again, the more you can be vocal about this stuff, the more chance it is that you're going to get what you need. And you just got to be brave enough to speak about it in the first place, which again, you go back to the social media stuff. I think that's why it's so important people do what they do, because it gets the message of the normality and the requirements that we do have out there so that people can understand.
And you mentioned there talking about it to your kids in class. That's just like I wish I had a teacher with a stoma whenever I was at school, to educate people, because kids are brought up and they don't understand. And as recent as the start of the year, I actually had a friend who was rushed into hospital and had emergency surgery. And when I announced on social media that I was going in to have an ileostomy done, the ostomy she could relate to, but she didn't understand what it was. And she sent me a message to say, "Are you having the same surgery as me?" And I didn't even know she'd had surgery. And she said, are you getting a bag? That's the same as me. And I actually had to go and meet with this girl, and I said to her, you know, beforehand, have you had an ileostomy done or a colostomy? And she said, I don't know, it's just a bag. I was like, I had to, like, she was a lot older than me as well. I was like, I had to go in and educate her, but she had no history, no connections to stoma, whereas I had my grandmother. Just yeah, it was completely different for her. People don't know about these things unless it's kind of in their sphere. There's someone related to them, or they have a friend who's had bowel issues, maybe going on to have a stoma bag, and they just don't know how to handle or deal with those situations whenever they arise. And you see it all the time in airports, going through the airport. Some of the staff have no idea what you're talking about when you say you've got a stoma bag. They look at you as if you've got horns in your head. What language are you speaking? People just don't know. So for you to be able to kind of have that relationship with your pupils going through school, like, how many kids are you impacting? It's totally amazing. It's to be applauded, definitely. I think that's amazing that you get to do that. And just having that courage to open up and just be you with them and not hide it is definitely to be commended. Ben, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us today. It's been a very interesting one. I think recently it's been people on here that have had ulcerative colitis or slow colon transit, and to have someone on sharing their Crohn's journey, and just a meal being on here and you've had a proctectomy done is amazing for us. It's amazing for our viewers and audience to get to hear and to be educated on. If there was one piece of information that you could leave with our audience today, what would it be? A little golden nugget. I know you've dropped in so many there, but if there was one more, what would it be?
um, I think just acknowledge the ride. Not acknowledge there's going to be a roller coaster. Acknowledge there's going to be good times and bad times, and sometimes the bad times can catch you off guard when you're least expecting it. For me, even now, nearly 2 years on, it'll be my second stoma anniversary in 9 days. I can still sometimes be changing my bag, look down, and think, "Oh wow, what?" And that's normal, and that's okay. And that took me a while to realize that that's okay. And then 5 minutes later, I might be like, "Oh yes, my stoma, I can just get on with stuff now." And so yeah, it is a roller coaster, and it just gradually gets easier.
Good job. Well, thank you so much, Ben, for being on here for our audience and listeners today. Ben's social media handles will be posted below in the show notes. Do go on, give him a follow. Follow Stoma Diaries. Tune in to see what he gets up to day in, day out. If you've got any more questions, pop them over there to him. Do interact with him. And as always, guys, tune in next week when we'll have another episode here on the Bowel Chronicles. For now, it's over and out. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.